Hello, Life in Jesus students. It's been a little bit since we've had an Edpuzzle video, so welcome to the lab for day 4 Edpuzzle. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll share my screen with you. And here we go. Life issues, abortion, beginning of life issues. That's what we're looking at lab for day 4. Let's go ahead and get started. So just a little background on abortion. Most of you know what this is. It's the deliberate termination of a pregnancy by killing the unborn child. It was legalized in 1973 in the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision. There have been nearly 52 million abortions since 1973, close to 1 million each year, so about 700,000 each year. I mentioned this in class the other day. Up to 90% of babies with Down syndrome are aborted in the U.S., and it's as high as 100% in some European countries. So this is the life issue I think you hear so much about within the Catholic Church. I think some people get tired of hearing about it, but it's a lot of times because of the numbers, right? If you look at the death penalty, you know, it's nowhere near even 1,000 people who are killed each year in the United States. So if you look at the numbers, this is a huge life issue. So the big question with abortion is, when does life begin? The Catholic Church holds that it begins at conception, which is the reason for their teaching on abortion. Not everyone agrees, so I'd like you to read the blue box on page 188 and be ready to answer a question about it. Okay, so we're going to look a little bit philosophically at this idea of life not beginning at conception. So essentially what we're going to do is look at what is the difference between a fetus, between an unborn child, and a toddler. And we're going to look at something called the SLED test, which is basically a philosophical argument that says if you say that a human is not as human because of SLED, S-L-E-D, then there's something wrong with that. For example, size and appearance. Value should not be determined by looking right or size. Some people say that a fetus doesn't look like a human, and that it's so small that it couldn't be a human. But we don't say that somebody who's 4 feet tall is less human than someone who's 5 feet tall. If someone gets completely maimed and scarred, we don't say that just because they don't look human means they're not human. The level of development. We say that because this fetus does not have brain waves yet, or it doesn't have a heartbeat yet, or it doesn't have, you know, X, Y, Z, the ability to feel pain, that it's not human yet. But our value is not defined by our ability or capability. We don't say that, right? We don't say that somebody who has not hit puberty just because they don't have the same ability and capability is less human. We don't say somebody that does not have as high of an IQ or is not as developed psychologically is not as human. The environment argument. Why can we terminate a pregnancy at 24 weeks, but not a premature birth at 24 weeks? Right? 40 weeks is full term, but more and more babies are able to survive for longer outside the womb. So if a baby can survive at 24 weeks outside of the womb, how could abortion be legal? What is the only difference other than it's in the woman's body or not? And then finally, the degree of dependency. So we are dependent on others for survival, but not for our value. A lot of people argue because a fetus is dependent on the mother's body, then it is the mother's choice. But we would never say that about a 1 or 2 year old. A 1 or 2 year old cannot take care of himself. It's dependent upon the parents, but we would say it's a terrible thing for parents not to support their 1 or 2 year old. Dependence on an external source does not make us non-human. We would not say that someone who depends on oxygen to live is less human than someone who does not. So I know there's a lot here. We're going to get into this more next class, but I want you to be familiar at least with this kind of philosophical argument. So abortion and abhorrent situations. So abhorrent are situations that inspire disgust or loathing. They are repugnant. So more often than not in political debates, you'll hear about abortion in the cases of rape and incest. And let me first say these are tragic and these are terrible acts, and that the church and society must do better to prevent these, reach out with love to victims, to prevent a culture of sexual assault, of sexual violence. But philosophically, this should not change the argument about abortion. If human life is sacred, the innocent should not be punished for rape. The fact that a woman is tragically raped does not mean that that life is less of a life. Right? Just like the fact that, whether someone is born from a one-night stand where drinking was involved or born from an extremely loving marriage, it doesn't change the value or the worth of that person. And it's dangerous to say that it does. A tragic situation, whether that's poverty, whether that's rape, whether the woman was abandoned, does not make a life less meaningful. And to say that it does is philosophically, it's troublesome, and it can lead down some dangerous roads. Now, let me say again, these are tragic, terrible situations. And I think as a society, as a church, we need to do a better job of making sure these situations don't happen. But it doesn't change the value of a life. Final slide. What do we do to fight against abortion? Well, one thing is to work to change societal acceptance, to use these philosophical arguments, and to overturn laws. That's why there's the March on Washington every year, the March for Life in January. A number of you have gone on it. Some of you are going on it. That is, right, one way. That's one of many ways, right? We need to provide material, emotional, and spiritual help for women who are facing crisis pregnancies, to recognize that their world won't fall apart if they have the baby. I said this in class the other day, but to make fathers accountable for children, to support women and families, whether that's paid maternity leave, health insurance, et cetera, to encourage adoption, to fight for better economic opportunities, for better education about these issues, and to recognize that pregnancy being considered a woman's issue is part of the problem. That if pregnancy were seen as a societal issue, if we didn't just say, well, this is something women have to deal with, but we rather said this is something we all have to deal with, if we could do that, then that would go a long way in recognizing that the solution to this is more holistic, and it's something that we all have to work towards. Anyways, it seems like it is not showing me anymore. I don't know why, but you can hear me. I am still wearing the oh, there you go. I am still wearing the headband. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you in class. Doesn't it look so beautiful outside? Right? It looks very heavenly, very peaceful. Have a good day.